Welcome to Pleasure Uprising. I'm Dr. Laura Juergens, intimacy coach, somatic practitioner, and your guide to getting out of your head and into your body, your desire, and your real capacity for connection. This show is for people who are done performing and ready to actually feel it. Let's go. Hey, welcome everyone. I am so glad you're here. Today, we're going to talk about why therapy and talking about it hasn't actually helped your sex life and what actually it takes to reach it. So this is for all of you who have done the work. You've done the real work. You've showed up to counseling, to therapy, individually or with your partner. You've maybe read some books, even good books. You've had conversations. Maybe you've tried thought work, mindfulness, maybe both. You've really thought hard about how to improve your sex life. You understand yourself now better, maybe than you've ever had before. And you still feel the same way in your body when it comes to sex and desire. So you know intellectually in your head that you have new insight, but nothing has actually changed in your body. And that's a specific kind of discouragement that I really want to address today because it can feel really hopeless, even though it's not. Because you've done the effort, you've gotten the insight, but they haven't actually translated yet into anything felt. And so that's what this episode is about. It is not a sign that you are beyond help. It is just a sign that you've been using the wrong tools. So the really good news is that I'm going to explain why those tools haven't helped so that you don't shame yourself about it anymore. That's going to leave you feeling lighter. And you're going to hear a little bit about what you can do and why that stuff will work better if you choose to do it. There's nothing in here that's going to pressure you ever, I hope. And if you've ever felt pressured by me, gosh, reach out and let me know because that's never my intent. But it will tell you like what's going to help and why what you've tried already hasn't helped. And so quick reference, if you haven't actually listened to last week's episode on why you can't actually think your way to desire, go back and listen first to that. Even if your problem isn't specifically desire, or maybe if you are a high desire partner and your partner has lower libido than you, it doesn't matter. This episode builds on it, and it's really useful to understand why you can't think your way to desire and higher libido. So today we're just going to go further. We're going to specifically look at therapy as a tool and why so many people come to me after a lot of therapy hasn't helped and what it is, why they get so demoralized, but also why it's just not the right tool in a lot of situations. Not to say it has no value. We're going to talk about the value, but in this case, for your sex life, a lot of times therapy doesn't really help much. So first, we're going to start with talking about the tool distinction. So everything that tends to be out there, easy to access when we're struggling with intimacy, operates on the same layer, which is the cognitive, so mind-based, or like narrative, which is the understanding of my situation layer. This is all it operates in your head. And that includes therapy, thought work, self-help books, journaling, conversation with your partner. All of this is working through language, insight, and meaning making. And those are real tools. They do valuable things. I am not dismissing them at all. I love these tools. I use all these tools myself. The problem isn't the tools. The problem is that desire and pleasure and real, true sense of embodied safety and intimacy don't live in those layers, the cognitive and narrative layers. They are not just living in your mind. They live in the body, in the nervous system, in the relational field between people that our body and our nervous system read That's what our body and our nervous system read, not words from someone. That's why when someone tells you, I'm fine, in that weird constricted voice, you don't believe them. You are reading the relational field and you are prioritizing that over the quote unquote meaning of their narrative. We do this to ourselves too, and it's important. But reaching the territory of the nervous system in the body requires tools that operate at that level, not at the level of understanding it better. You can have completely accurate, healthy thoughts about sex and still feel nothing in your body because there is a disconnect between the mind and the body there. Those are two things in different places, right? And not that the mind isn't part of the body, we can get all into the semantics of it, but focus here on, let's look at what cognitive tools do well and when you need something different. So cognitive tools are exactly the right tool for cognitive problems. So I love thought work and cognitive tools. I am trained in it. I use it in my practice. I use it in my life, but I don't use it for everything. I don't use that one hammer for everything. Not everything needs a hammer, right? And the reason that thought work hasn't solved your sex life challenges or intimacy challenges isn't that you haven't done enough of it. It isn't that you haven't found the right thought. It isn't that you haven't worked hard enough. It is that this is primarily not a cognitive problem. The nervous system patterns that drive disconnection in relationship and disconnection from your own desire in your body were laid down separately from language. And oftentimes before language, before analysis, before the kind of meaning making that thought work reaches. I love thought work for things like reducing shame over time in your own mindset. It can really help you shift how you interpret your experience. It can help you shift it's really about shifting your self-talk so that you're generating more positive relationship with yourself. Right? We can't just walk around having an abuser in our head and expect that we're going to feel great about ourselves. We have to have thought work really does a great job at helping shift that abuser into an ally. But it can't update an automated body response. That is not what it's designed to do. And that's not where so some schools of thought work will tell you that all feelings come from thoughts. And that's actually not true. The science does not support that at all. There's also bottom-up generation of feelings. Doesn't mean some feelings don't come from thoughts. Some of them do. Some of them do come from our conscious mind. But there's a lot of emotional responses that are automatically activated through our body and through our nervous system. And it's not a failure of thought work. It's just a category mismatch. So it's just helpful to have different tools for different things. Okay. So that's for, y'all who have done cognitive thought work type stuff with other, like a life coaching framework or with a cognitive behavioral therapist type of person. For talk therapy folks, and even people who have done somatic therapy, I also want to say, so good therapy is oriented towards processing what happened, understanding your history, making meaning of your experience, metabolizing old wounds, working through what you're carrying. That is awesome. It's real work. It's often necessary work. And I am 100% on board with it. Not every single practitioner am I 100% on board with, and not every single therapeutic approach am I 100% on board with. There's quite a few that I'm really not on board with at all, and that can do real harm, in my opinion, in my experience. But as a general thing, therapy, yay, not here to dismiss it. It is, however, it is backward facing by design. And desire is forward facing. Desire and sexuality requires real intimacy. For most people require building new capacity, new embodied experience, new ways of being in your body and with another person. Because whatever's been happening in the past hasn't been working. Even if you have great sex and great intimacy in your past, if it's not currently present and you want it now, then you still need to build some new capacity, because there's chances are that whatever was happening in the past was under a specific set of circumstances. We need to help you find a way to bring that into who you are now and what your life is now and who your partner is now, if you have one, or who you want your future partner to be. And even somatic therapy and somatic therapists who work with the body well are primarily helping you process what happened in the body and in your emotions in the past. And that's very different from building new erotic and relational capacity going forward. And that is a more specialized lane, that building new erotic and relational capacity going forward. It exists. It's just not what therapy is. So I think most people don't really know about the distinctions between professionals, and especially sexual professionals. Most people don't know that even in therapy, there's a lot of different modalities and people are trained differently. Nobody really tells us this. It's starting to become more obvious. And I think one of the reasons for that is because people have been really burned by bad talk therapy or other practices that felt really not helpful for them. And so we're starting to get more discernment and more informed consumers. And I think that is really good. I think the same thing is happening in coaching. And there's some bad actors out there in coaching, just like there are bad surgeons and mechanics and lawyers. And there's some great ones, just like there are great surgeons, mechanics, lawyers, therapists. And in any profession that's been around for a while, you're going to start seeing people be real discerning about who they work with. And I think that's a really good thing. But oftentimes what's happened in therapy is that the professionals you've already seen often don't tell you when you're at the edge of their competence. And this happens in coaching too. It actually happens in a lot of professions. Sometimes they don't know where that edge is. And your doctor is a good example too. If you've gone to your doctor for libido issues, they may have offered hormones. That's what's in their toolkit. It's not because it's the right answer for most people. In fact, it's not. And hormones don't help in the majority of situations. That is what's documented in the research. Doctors don't know this. They don't have sexuality training. They don't understand how libido works, and they haven't read the research on libido. So they're giving you the tool that they have, and they're not telling you, hey, I have no training in this. This is all I've got. And fine. That I would really appreciate it if they would say that, but most of the time they don't. Same thing with therapists. They might have suggested better communication, date nights, scheduling sex, because that's what they know to say. And most therapists are not trained in how to really help with desire and arousal issues. Most of them don't know the difference between those issues. And none of that is bad faith. It is actually just a training and information problem. Quick break. If you are listening to this show, something in your intimate life may not be where you want it to be. And if you've been trying to think or talk your way through it and it's not quite working, that's not a you problem. That's just a method problem. I made a free guide to help called Get Out of Your Head, a starter guide to releasing the pressure, shame, and shoulds around intimacy. It has some reflection exercises that go deeper than anything you'll typically find in a freebie. And most people feel something shift after just the first one. So go grab it at laurajurgens.com/guide, and the link is in the show notes. And so I want to share, that I haven't always been an informed consumer. And why would I have been, right? Nobody handed me a map, and probably nobody handed you a map to how to find the right people. I spent about 15 years with analytically trained talk therapists, like traditional psychotherapists. They were smart people. Presumably they cared about people in some way, shape, or form, because that's why they were in that job. I couldn't have told you from working with them that they cared about me, because part of their training was to not show any empathy. But they were presumably smart, caring people. And not one of them in 15 years ever identified that I had serious, unprocessed trauma, or told me that trauma was outside their scope, or referred me out to somebody who was a trauma therapist. And a lot of the therapy I received was actively re-traumatizing. It actively caused me more harm, not because anyone was malicious, but because they did not know that their tool was not the right tool for the problem. So it took me actually finding a therapist who actually was trauma trained, diagnosed me right away with PTSD, and was able to tell me that, oh, yeah, you sitting in a room telling your story to somebody who's actively trained not to show any emotion or empathy to you, it makes total sense that that was re-traumatizing. They were mad at the therapist that I had seen. I was mad. I'm not really mad at them anymore. I am disappointed that that is the way that the training has gone. I think more therapists now realize when they're at the limit of their training, but some of them don't, and some of them won't say. But the tool was the wrong tool for the problem. What I learned from that process is to become a very discerning consumer. I'm not like the baby bird just showing up and being like, fix me, which is kind of how I used to do it. And when I look back, that's how I understand kind of what I was in so much distress. I was just like, this person says they're a therapist. They must know how to deal with this. That was the assumption in my brain. It was a valid assumption for an uninformed consumer. But this is why I now only see very specifically trained therapists for my own processing of historical baggage, because I know my trauma lives in the body. I only see specifically somatically trained therapists with certain modalities and not others. I also hire coaches when I want to build something new. And when I want different tools that will help me move forward, I go to a coach, because that is what a coaching container does, is actually help you build skills and new tools. They're just different jobs. And like any profession, quality varies. It varies in coaches too. And I've had some bad coaching experiences, and I've learned to be very discerning about who I work with. And I've had some fantastic coaching and therapy experiences. Some of my closest collaborators and the people I trust most are good therapists and good coaches. Some of my best friends are good therapists and good coaches. And where I define that is that there's, humility, that there's honest assessment of what your lane is, and there's a willingness to talk openly with your clients and take ownership over where your lane ends and where it doesn't, and to refer people out. And a lot of people don't know how to ask questions to find out whether those are the people you're working with. But I encourage you to do that. So what is it that the right tool actually does for sexuality and intimacy in particular? So because those challenges are body-based, we need to work at the level of the nervous system and the body, not just the mind. We also need to be forward-facing, building new capacity, new experience, and new ways of being with yourself, and maybe with a partner if you have one or you want one. Not just processing what happened in the past, not just talking about the past. And in relationship, in addition, right, like a couples counseling kind of session is going to be oriented towards processing things that haven't worked, whereas a coaching session for couples is going to be oriented on building new capacity so you have some tools that actually do work, right? I just did this with people this morning where, they want to talk about why he says this thing and it drives me nuts and all the things he does wrong and what she does that makes me do that and blah, blah, blah. This is all that like past focus. Sometimes we need to create some space for that and get it out. Okay, fine. But we need to move on quickly because it's actually not helping to just stay stuck in blame and accusation over the past. It's already gone. It's over. It's so over. It's like as over as something that happened a million years ago. It's the same amount of over. So what we need to do is actually build capacity so you could do something different next time. So you could say something different in that situation so that you would know how to slow down and how to soften and how to check in with yourself and how to represent what your feelings are instead of make accusations, right? That's building new capacity. And that's how we build more safety and more nervous system, calmness and safety, connection, right? And emotional closeness. And that's also when we want to build in connection with your own sense of desire, with your own pleasure in your body, with what you like, what you want to feel, what you don't want to feel, your entitlement to your boundaries. the way that you express them, whether you can express them kindly so that they land better and you get a better response, whether you can repair with your partner when there's a rupture so that you both feel connected and safe whenever there's any sort of disagreement, instead of, having this sort of accumulation of resentments over and over again. All of that is building new capacity, new experience, and it's updating your body's relationship with yourself and with a partner. And so when we want to do that, we actually can't just do generic relationship talk therapy. We need to actually practice in a relationship. In the relationship, people get to practice in the relationship with me. My approach is something I call relationship lab, where we actually practice relationally. Okay, how does it land for you if I say this? How does it land if I say this? What feels better in your body, right? How about if we slow down and I orient myself, and I'm this distance from you versus this distance from you? How about the energy that I bring? What feels good to you? What feels good in terms of, even really small things, like how you like to be checked in with when you're upset, right? Those are relational examples of work actually happening in relationship. And desire is relational too. It is a fun thing in my practice that I get to play with people in a container where, it's always clothes on, there's no genital touching, we're not kissing or anything like that, but we can play with sexual energy and see what creates desire for someone. I get to turn people on all the time. It's really fun. And sometimes it's, how about if I look at you like this across the room? What if we really slow down and we build like a little anticipation with a little bit of closeness, right? Like, what are the kinds of words that really help you feel into your desire, right? That type of relationship lab allows for the body to have new experiences. And we want to have it be an integrative space where it draws on nervous system science, attachment research. So you actually, I know what kinds of attachment challenges are going to really trigger people if they're avoidant or they're anxiously attached or they have a tendency to kind of swing between both, right? We want to have a really good grounding. You want someone with a good grounding in somatics, in body-based practices, and in erotic psychology, the full picture. And that's why for me, I kept going with more certifications after ThoughtWork training to add the somatic dimensions, to add the attachment healing through neuroaffective touch, which is something I do. There's an episode on it you can listen to if you want to know more about that. There's also some stuff on my website about it. But that works at the level of the nervous system and human attachment in a way that almost nothing else does. And it's not, though I didn't add those tools because the other tools are bad, but I added them because they weren't sufficient for the territory where I work with people. And you don't have to work with me, but if you're looking for the right kind of support around body-based challenges, please do consider looking for someone who has body-based training, who has a skills development type of orientation like a coach, and who is specialized in the area that you want to work, and who has multiple tools in their toolbox, not one thing. Because if they only have one thing, there's a really good chance they're going to, do that old cliche of like, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So every single one of your problems, they're going to try to hit with the same thing. And it might not be the right tool. And you want somebody who's honest about their scope, who tells you, okay, here's the limits of my practice. Here's the boundaries of my practice. Here's what we do and don't do. Here's what I can help you with. Here's who I don't work with, right? And whether you're working with a therapist or a coach or any other professional, please do, have those kinds of, ask about those kinds of things. And so this is just, I want to say something quick here, but important about desire discrepancy situations, because oftentimes we think about, the last episode I was talking about, you can't think your way to desire. It was really focused more on like low libido people who are struggling. The higher desire partner has often also tried therapy and couples counseling. They've also tried just being patient. They've tried communicating better. They've tried planning the date nights. And they're carrying this version of the same discouragement. working hard with the wrong tools. And so we may be coming from different entry points, but you're working in the same territory. Nobody has failed. You've just been using what was available and visible. And it's my job here and why I even do this podcast to make other alternatives more visible for people so that you at least know what's on the table and you know what kind of tools are available to pick up. Because a lot of times you've just been working from the wrong place. So I want to encourage you to, instead of being discouraged or feeling like there's nothing you can do, or if you're at the point of like writing off your erotic self, because so many people are, deciding that your pleasure, your desire, your sexual joy matter less than everything else on your list. And I really want to invite you to consider not doing that. Your pleasure, your desire, your joy, your just even sense of aliveness, whether you want to share that eroticism with anyone else or not, it doesn't matter. Have it for yourself. Let it just fill you up with aliveness. Let that be a resource for you as you move through the world. That's what our sexuality and our eroticism is meant to do. And I just want to invite you to consider waiting before you write off that part of yourself. You don't have to wait forever, just long enough to try the right tool instead of the wrong one. Because I think you deserve the greatest sex life imaginable. I mean that literally. I really feel like I think the world would be such a better place. And there would be so many less abuses, so much less overconsumption, and so much less like numbing out if we were really present in our bodies, feeling real connection, feeling that we are worthy of love, that it is safe to be loved, that it is safe to have the touch that we want, that it's okay to ask for what we want and to allow ourselves to be disappointed, but still be held in empathy, to let go of all the shame. I just think the world would be such a better place if we were all felt completely entitled to our full erotic selves inside us and to sharing it with whoever feels like they really want to play with us in full consent as an adult. And so I want that for everyone. I want everybody to have the greatest sex life imaginable, but it doesn't come from more insight from even listening to a podcast, even this one, or finding the right hormone or like better communication. Those kinds of things can help. They really can. But knowing when to use them and when they're required is really important, because if we just try to push through with those mind-based fixes or medical interventions without actually addressing the real nervous system situation and the body situation, then unfortunately what happens is they fail, because your nervous system and your body will always override that stuff. And we have evidence of that in research. So just know you haven't exhausted your options. You've just exhausted the obvious ones. And so if you're ready to think really like deeply about helping yourself get back into your body and not relying so much on your mind trying to think your way out of your challenges, please go grab my guide. It is at laurajergens.com/guide. You've probably heard a little snippet already about it, and you'll hear another one at the end. And the link is in the show notes. It's everywhere because it is a guide to starting to get out of your head. All right, my dears, I'll see you here next week. Hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this show, I want to invite you to check out one of my favorite things that I've ever created. It's a free guide called Get Out of Your Head, a starter guide to releasing the pressure, shame, and shoulds around intimacy. It has 4 reflection exercises that go deeper than anything you'll find in a typical freebie, and most people feel a shift just after part 1. So go grab it at laurajergens.com/guide. The link is in the show notes. And if you're ready to find out what your specific path looks like, I'd love to talk to you. Booking info is also in the show notes, and I will see you here next week.